And joining me now is Edward Alden. He is a U.S.-Canada Trade and Border Issues Analyst, as well as a Senior Fellow with the Council on Foreign Relations. Edward, thank you very much for joining us.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
The minister is optimistic this can be rolled out in 30 days. Is that a reasonable expectation with what needs to be done? Start up that group and have a fentanyl czar appointed, get more border guards there. Is that reasonable to expect?
Yeah, I think those are all reasonable. The question is what they'll achieve. But if you look at the initiatives that the U.S. and Canadian governments took together after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, there were a lot of big changes rolled out pretty quickly. So, yeah, absolutely. If the will is there, this is all achievable. Whether it will do anything to reduce fentanyl consumption is entirely another question.
And now, with the fentanyl and going across the border, not much is coming across from Canada relative to the southern border. Yep. Is it going across the physical border, or do we have to look at airports and places like that?
Oh, I mean, you have to look at mail. It's going across in envelopes and packages. Fentanyl is extremely easy to smuggle. We're talking about small pills here. And actually, you know, if you go back to the border shutdowns during the COVID pandemic, we saw an increase in fentanyl smuggling because it was much easier to move than bulkier drugs. So border measures alone are going to do little or nothing to stop the smuggling of fentanyl. This is a symbolic action rather than a practical one for dealing with a very real crisis.
So then what would you like to see done to actually tackle this issue at the border?
I don't think the issue should be tackled at the border. I mean, for the United States, it's primarily a problem of domestic addiction, which is a huge problem here. Opioid treatment facilities are lacking across the country. I mean, we see this with every border issue, whether it be terrorism or unauthorized migration or diseases during the pandemics. Border measures can help, they can make a difference, but they're only one part of a much more complex solution. And unfortunately, we have a president down here in the United States right now that sees borders as a one-size-fits-all solution for every problem. And that's just not realistic.
And so do you feel that in 30 days we might not have seen a difference or a dent made, and we'll have more demands placed on us by Trump?
Who knows, right? I mean, we won't see numbers that tell us anything significant about whether these measures are making a difference. They're a measure of effort. I think the joint task force is a good idea. I think to the extent that you're going to tackle this with law enforcement, you have to go after the organized crime groups that are producing and smuggling fentanyl. That's likely to make more of a dent than anything you can do with border control measures. So I think there are some positive elements in this plan, but no, we're going to see no noticeable difference in 30 days. And the question is, you know, will President Trump continue to declare victory anyway and say, hey, Canadians are trying hard, the Mexicans are trying hard? That's all I'm really asking for. And of course, we can hope that will be the case.
And just one more question, with the cartels being declared terrorist groups, does that make a difference?
Not really practically, right? I mean, a lot of the restrictions on that are travel restrictions and restrictions on finance and access to banks and other such things. It's not going to materially affect how these cartels operate. I mean, Mexican military and legal action within Mexico could make a difference. But again, there are so many ways to smuggle this drug across borders. Unless you deal with the demand problem, you're not going to make an appreciable difference. This is mostly, again, political symbolism, which is unfortunately what Donald Trump specializes in.
Okay, Edward, thank you for your insight. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
Edward Alden is a U.S.-Canada Trade and Border Issues Analyst, as well as a Senior Fellow with the Council on Foreign Relations.